Hi, my name is Dwayne Gathers, and welcome to Civitas LA, where we feature diverse and emerging leaders who make up this dynamic region and are creating community every day and building a better tomorrow. Each week, we hear from, learn from, and are truly inspired by a new generation of civic entrepreneurs who are forging a path forward in making Los Angeles a stronger, more resilient, and connected group of citizens. Now more than ever, we aim to elevate civic discourse, foster community connections, and promote civic knowledge and engagement across the greater Los Angeles region while elevating diverse and emerging voices in this conversation. Recently, October 10th to be specific, the World Federation of Mental Health hosted the annual World Mental Health Day 2020. Since 1992, this has been a globally recognized day, elevating the importance of mental health issues and raising awareness around these issues and the importance of mental health as a global concern and bringing mental health to all. And certainly, now more than ever, the world is experiencing an unprecedented level of mental health challenges brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, with rising levels of anxiety, fear, isolation, social distancing restrictions, and emotional distress. As the study of mindfulness has blossomed as an area of academic study and practice, many are bringing this practice of mindfulness to communities at large, but also aiming to bring this practice to previously underserved communities as poverty has been linked to decreased functional brain connectivity, anxiety, and depression. So how are people coping through crisis? What are the tools that people can bring into their lives to maintain or strengthen mental health and well-being? Here with us today to discuss his work in bringing mindfulness, meditation, and well-being to diverse and previously underserved communities, we are absolutely delighted to welcome Justin Michael Williams to Civitas LA. Justin is a noted author, musician, and inspirational speaker. Justin, welcome to Civitas LA.
Thank you, Dwayne. I'm so excited to be here with you all today.
Well, we are grateful to have you here with us today. You know, Justin, you have a very interesting background, so we always like to ask our guests to share a little bit of their journey with our audience to get us started, please.
Yeah, no, of course. So, I grew up actually in the Bay Area, the East Bay, a little town called Pittsburgh, California. Interesting thing about Pittsburgh is it was listed as one of the 12th most diverse cities in all of California. And at the same time, it is one of the most dangerous cities. And so I grew up in a home with gunshot holes literally on the outside of my house, and domestic violence and trauma and really a lot of things that a lot of the young people today are facing. One of the things that a lot of the studies are showing is that young people today are facing a level of PTSD that's similar to returning war veterans coming back from the war, but there's nothing P or post about it when it's like every day. It's a present traumatic stress disorder. And, now with the context that I have today, I realize that that's how I grew up, and when you grow up in those kind of environments, I think all kids, you learn how to adapt, and everybody adapts in their own ways. And for me, my adaptation was one of the ones that I think looks healthy from the outside, but has its shadow too. So like I became a chronic overachiever. While other people in my family maybe decided to sell drugs or went down these different roads of adaptations, like I just thought if I just achieve enough, if I just do enough, if I get out of here, then I'll finally be successful and I can make a better life for my family and myself. And so the shadow of that is my self-worth, right, gets like totally intertwined and entangled with achievements and not knowing who I am outside of that. And so I'm telling all of that to say, I was that kid who checked every freaking box on the list. Every box. If there was a box, I checked it. Okay. Like graduated at the top of my class president, got all these scholarships, got a full ride academic scholarship to go to UCLA. I get to LA. I'm at the top of my class. And I had this moment in LA where I was sitting on the floor of my dorm room. I'll never forget. Every time I tell this, it takes me right back there. And I had developed an eating disorder that got pretty severe my freshman year of college. So context, I know people can't see me right now. I'm about 6 feet tall. I weigh 160 pounds now. My freshman year, by the end of that of college, I weighed 115 pounds.
Wow.
And what had happened was I was sitting there on the floor and I had this realization that I had gone to LA. I had come out of the closet. I had extra money for the first time. I was at the top of my class. I was in the impacted major that I wanted to be in. Everything on the outside of my life looked like I'd always dreamed of, but I was still miserable. inside I was still miserable. And I like couldn't figure out what, like why, like how is this possible? I thought that once I finally got out, once I finally made it, then I would be happy. And once that didn't happen, it kind of just sent me on this rapid downward spiral that, is where the eating disorder kind of came from. I think I was trying to figure out what was wrong. And then kind of a moment happened where it got recommended that I go to therapy. Now, this is like 16 years ago. I didn't know no Black people going to therapy.
Right.
I was like such a huge secret. Like I didn't want to tell anybody in my family I was going to therapy. And I go to therapy and the therapist said, you should try meditation. And I look at this man like, meta what? Like that's literally what I said. I'm like, literally, this is like 16 years ago. Oprah hadn't done no meditation challenge. I didn't know any Black people meditating at all. And in fact, I said, isn't that worshiping the devil? Like that's what I asked him. And then he explains to me that meditation wasn't just about relaxing. It was a way that you could start to find actual peace inside of yourself. Okay. And it was the first time that I even like considered that concept. Like, wait, I'm not supposed to find happiness by what I'm doing. There's some other way of defining this. It was my first peek into what has now become basically my whole life around personal growth and wellness and well-being.
So I was going to ask you, how did you get involved? And that's clearly the beginning of this journey. Then.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many years ago was that?
I'm 32 now, almost 33, and I was 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was 18 when this happened.
Well, to set the context for this conversation and for what you just shared, I saw some stats from the World Health Organization, which were really, to me, seemed rather bleak. They spoke to these stats. 450 million worldwide live with mental health disorders. Every 40 seconds, someone dies by suicide, annually representing over 800,000 people dying by suicide, more than by war or homicide together, and that suicide is the second leading cause of death amongst 15 to 29-year-olds. Are you aware of those stats, and what are your thoughts, and how does this inform the work that you do and the communities that you serve?
Yeah, these stats, Dwayne, are exhausting, to hear, and also it totally informed my work. And I want to share a couple other ones that I brought with me that will
Please
deepen
do.
this a little bit for us, that are really interesting, because those are all incredible. I guess incredible is not the right word. Those are all so sad. And at the same time, when we look at LGBTQIA+ and questioning youth are 3 times more likely to attempt suicide than straight youth, which if you're already looking at that number as it's the second leading cause,
Right.
then you times that by 3. 1/2 of all mental illness begins by the age of 14 and 3/4 by the age of 24. And this is a really big one, is African American and Latinx students are using mental health services at 50% the rate of white students, whereas the actual occurrence of mental health issues can actually be much higher because of the trauma that's being inflicted. And so all of those things together play a big impact on the communities that I am here to serve and the work that I'm here to do, because I do a lot of work with youth, a lot, youth and young adults, high schools and college students. It's just a big mission for me, because I think directly about what my life would have been like if it had not just been quite literally like happenstance that the therapist that I went to happened to mention something like mental health, and I just happened to fall into the right place to be open to it. And I think of all the kids who are dealing with these things and have no one to relate to, no one who looks like them, no one who really understands what they're going through, that can help them through some of this process.
Well, certainly your work impacts and serves a broad number of communities, and I believe your work is now expanded to touch people in over 40 countries. So that's wonderful. But certainly, your work also invites in communities of color who are often left out of these wellness spaces. So what were you seeing out there specifically that made this space sort of inaccessible to communities of color and particularly youth?
I'll just be very frank here when I say this very directly. So all of these practices, and I can say that factually, all of them, when you're talking about mindfulness and mental health and even other of like the woo-woo kind of rituals, astrology and crystal, like all this stuff, originally comes from indigenous people and people of color around the world, all of them. And what's happened is these practices were demonized and taken away, colonized, corporatized, and then sold back to us in a way that we feel like, ooh, that ain't for us. Like, people like us don't do that.
Right.
That's not good. And what I find is that when people of color, indigenous people, and to be quite honest, like anyone who's kind of facing an uphill battle to really enjoy the freedom that is their birthright, I'm talking women, I'm talking the queer community, like all around, it feels like we're coming home to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because these practices were not just made, I'm specifically talking about, mindfulness and meditation and practices of well-being, were not just made to like help us relax. They've always actually been a part of the resistance or a part of overcoming or a part of, these communities stepping forward in the world. And so, what I saw, quite honestly, in the beginning of my career teaching meditation, so I've been teaching since I was 20. I was teaching at UCLA. Within 2 years after that first moment, I did a teacher training and did this 3-year-long apprenticeship with one of the world's most renowned meditation teachers. It was such a gift. His name is Lauren Roche.
Okay.
And what happened when I met Lauren, he has some incredible books that have been in print for like 35 years. He said to me, Justin, in my entire 40 years of teaching, I've never seen someone who looks like you and who's gone through what you've gone through, who's been interested in this practice. And he said very fortuitously, one day, I think there are going to be people who need to hear your voice who don't need to hear mine. This is when I was 19.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I'm actually at that moment being like a 19-year-old kid. I remember when he said that, I was like, no pressure. Like, that's what I said.
Right.
I was like, okay.
Say what?
Sure, dude. And next thing you know, I apprenticed with him for 3 years. And the moment came because in the beginning of my teaching, I was quite literally like the token Black guy teaching 2 rooms of like hundreds of spiritually woke white women, and I still am often, and that's fine. I'm totally grateful to be in those spaces. But what I recognized, especially when the media started to really portray the harm and horror that were happening in communities of color, I started to say, okay, some people are showing up in this time by organizing or marching or protesting or these different things. And if we're all supposed to be showing up in this movement for equality in a way that's authentic to us, like how do I show up in the way that best uses my gifts and talents and skills? Like, because me organizing or going to a protest, I can go, but it's not using any of my talents. And so I started teaching in LA to communities of people who looked more like me.
Okay.
And what happened right away, Dwayne, that was fascinating is I had given my like kind of keynote talk, my like TED Talk, version of my thing. I mean, hundreds of times over at huge festivals and conferences. The first time I ever did it in front of a room that was all Black and Latino, I start talking and I always ask at the beginning, does anybody have any questions before we begin that you want to make sure you get out? And this woman raises her hand. Iris was her name. I'll never forget.
Okay.
And she said, well, my mom told me that I can't meditate because this is calling in spirits and worshiping the devil.
Okay.
And I laughed because I remembered me saying that to the therapist. But I'm talking years of in rooms of hundreds, thousands of white people, no one had ever asked me that question. And so I realized in that moment that I was going to have to throw that keynote in the garbage can. And this was going to be a whole different talk.
A whole new conversation.
Yeah.
Well, certainly you've been able to grow your work and broaden the communities that you serve through various platforms. So let's talk about some of those since you seem to be everywhere these days. So we are grateful that you're on our podcast because you are our first podcaster on our podcast. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
And, we know you've had a successful podcast called Motivation for Black People. So tell us about this podcast, how it came about, and how long it's been running and the issues you've been addressing there.
Yeah, so I started Motivation for Black People. It was really interesting, Dwayne, because I'm biracial. I'm half Black. My mom's Persian and Italian. My dad's Black. And I remember when I had the idea come to me, it was, again, around this thought of how do I show up? And I said, okay, in a space and a time where the idea of Blackness in the media and in the news is just constantly portrayed with this struggle always. Like there's no one really just motivating us and really celebrating Black voices in a way that elevates and like lifts them up. And when you looked in the podcast space, it's like, you know, for every 10 white guests, there's one Black guest, probably. I'm just making a random estimate, you know? And I said, okay, what would it be like if I created a show that talked about motivation and inspiration from a uniquely Black context, and that my mission was to elevate Black voices. And we did 129 episodes.
Oh, excellent.
It's been just amazing. Have had some incredible people on it, including Sean King and Terrell Alvin McCraney and Alicia Garza. Just really incredible voices, and people that are even much lesser known who really brought it, you know, with some great teachings. And it was really interesting because I got to interview some people who were just mind-blowing. And they said to me, this is my first podcast. And it showed. I was like, you should be on every podcast, but like the space is just not there. So anyway, the podcast was phenomenal and is phenomenal. And this year we've gone through a big shift with the podcast.
Well, I remember the podcast episode that you had with the gentleman, the rap artist out of Cleveland, and he himself talked about setting up a mental health organization in Cleveland because this was not an issue that was really covered in Black communities. So that was terrific. But yes, I want to talk about this transition that you're making, like because I read somewhere that you are portraying this as a combination of, imagine if church, Super Soul Sundays, and a TED Talk had a baby. So tell us about this mashup here and what's going to come of this. Share with our audience, since I think this is going to be a new launch here.
It's been so fun. So for the past, now at the time that we're recording this, for the past 11 weeks, I had this idea come to me, like you just said. What if we had this space where we could come together across religious divides, across political divides, across our skin, like across every divide, and really come together in this space of healing, of inspiration, of motivation, but not just like, the reason I said it's like church, but also Super Soul Sunday and also a TED Talk is like, church is great. I grew up in church, but you are inspired and then you leave and then it's like, poof, it's like disappears, right? And so what if we could be like TED Talk style where we're giving people action steps and like slides and things to implement. And so we've been doing it. It's called The Kingdom.
Okay.
People can find it on my website. And I kept having this thought saying, this is what the podcast needs to be. Because my podcast for the last several years, I think needed to be motivation for Black people. And now when we look around in the world, there are so many things that are elevating Black voices. And the honest truth is, my quote unquote audience, I don't like when people really talk about it that way, but my community really has always been 50%, like 50% of the thousands of people on my email list are like spiritual white women and men and corporate people. And then the other 50% are like Gen Z, millennial, queer, whatever. And I've always had offerings that are separating them. And so in 2020 and beyond, I just set a big intention with myself. I said, it's time for us to come together. And so the podcast now is called The Kingdom Podcast. And it really is, it's not about like the masculine version of a king or this or that. It's really just about us coming together to really claim the royalty that we all are internally and the sovereignty that we have within ourselves. And so that's the podcast now, and it will be moving forward.
When does this launch?
It's already on. It's already launched. It's already out. Yeah.
We will look for The Kingdom.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited, Justin, to also celebrate your book. You are a noted and recent author, having launched a book that came out in February of this year entitled Stay Woke, a meditation guide for the rest of us. So tell us a little bit about the book, and I'm particularly interested in how you emphasize the word rest in the term rest of us.
So it's so funny, Dwayne. I got asked to write a book 5 or 6 years ago about meditation by a pretty big publishing company. And I was like, hell no. Like I literally said no. I was like, nope. Like I don't want to write a book. The world doesn't need another meditation book. Like, no. But this was at that time when I was still kind of the token Black guy, teaching in these spaces. And then once that transition happened, where I was speaking it to new audiences, I had this reckoning where I said, this community doesn't have a book. And there's going to be a lot of people who are never able to come to an event with me or never going to see anything. And there literally is no book. I realized this, that really intersected how mindfulness and meditation intersected social justice, equality, and actually helping us take action in our individual lives and in our collective reality. And that's really the anchor of what the book is and how I teach is it's not about meditation to relax or to like be zen. It's meditation to become more alive, to become more connected to who you are, more connected to your passions, more connected to your emotions, more connected to the things you care about and the causes you believe in. And really so we could take action for even people who can't take action for themselves.
Well, you certainly found inspiration, since I think you found 300 pages of inspiration. I have a copy of the book and have sent copies to relatives of mine, so kudos on that. How are people responding to the book? Who's your audience for the book?
It's been so incredible. So it's funny because on that note of the rest of us, when I was writing the book towards the end, my publisher asked me, can you define the rest of us?
Interesting. So define that for us, please.
Yeah. So there's this section of the book. I'm actually going to pause so I can it's very short. I can read it to you if that's okay.
Yeah,
so
that's
you can
great.
edit
Please.
here. Okay, cool. So let me just pull it up. All right. So I have it right here in front of me. And this is on page 3 of the book. And it says this. For my Black brothers and sisters, this is for you. For my LGBTQIA+ brothers and sisters, this is for you. For my women who've had enough, this is for you. For my starving artists and workaholic creatives, this is for you. For my conscious entrepreneurs who want to make an impact, this is for you. For those who've been discriminated against for their otherness, this is for you. For my social justice warriors, this is for you. For my tree-loving planet savers, this is for you. And for all people of color, and everyone who is woke enough to understand why I'm pointing that out in the first place, this is for you. This book is for us, for the people. And, you know, when I was writing this book 2 years ago, I could have never imagined that I was writing it for this time.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the book came out February 2020, just before, you know, all of this started in the way that it is now. And before I wrote the book, people always had to ask me, who's the rest of us? Like, who do you mean? And I think now that we're in this moment in history, I think people get it. Like, we know who the rest of us are, like those of us who really believe in equality and who believe in justice and who understand that it's not about politics, but that it's about all of us really creating this new world where it's a great world for everybody who's here. And so that's who the book is for, you know?
Okay.
So the audience it's crazy. I mean, I have people from, like in one of my last events, I had a 67-year-old white woman from Canada in a breakout room with a 17-year-old Black boy from Compton.
Okay.
So we are coming together.
and how are book sales, and where can people find this book?
Oh, yeah. So you can find it literally anywhere that books are. It's called Stay Woke, a meditation guide for the rest of us. But if you want to go to the specific book website, it's staywokegiveback.com.
Excellent.
And the sales are actually, believe it, they're going up right now, which is, I think, unusual for a book that came out in February and then a tour getting canceled because of a pandemic, and then, you know, people recognizing that this self-care really matters right now.
Absolutely. Well, let's speak to the tours that you were going on and or planning, because I know you've been partnering with Sounds True Foundation and really taking this message to inner city youth around America. So, you know, let's talk about that, because I know in the Bay Area, your stomping ground, there was the Mindful Life Project, which works to bring mindfulness to inner city schools, and I know you are focused on that as well. So tell us about the book tour that you were planning and that are planning, and how's that happening now during this COVID period?
Yeah, and I just want to I want to actually like elevate Mindful Life Project because they're amazing. I know JG, the founder there,
Okay.
and they particularly right now are working with elementary school students and junior high, and the work that I'm doing is focusing on high school and college students.
Okay.
And it was a really amazing moment because I finished my book, And like every author, you finish your book and then you get like shipped off to the marketing team, right? And you go from like creative mode into like marketing mode, machine mode. And the marketing team at this very white publisher, goes, hey, all right, we're going to start your book tour and we want you to go to this neighborhood in the Upper West Side and this neighborhood here and this neighborhood there. And I looked at them and I was like, y'all, the rest of us ain't in a bookstore, an indie bookstore in the Upper West Side.
Right,
And
86th and Columbus.
yeah, I'm like, no, I said, we could go there, but that can't be the only place we're going. And so they look at me and they said, what do you want to do? And it was this beautiful moment because I just really went into meditation and I said, if I could dream up anything that I could do with this book, what would it be? And I had this idea come to me. I don't know if anybody has these experiences or if you've had this where you just like have an idea just like download into your brain where every single step is like somebody plugged a flash drive into my head. And the idea said this: call the founder of Sounds True. Her name is Tammy Simon, the founder, who at that point I had never met. And ask her if you can go on a tour. Instead of going to the most privileged neighborhoods, go to the most impacted neighborhoods. Flint, Southside Chicago, Oakland, Atlanta. And instead of going to bookstores, go to high schools where the kids are at, go to colleges, and instead of selling them the book, give them the book for free.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, here I am, this young first-time author about to call the founder of my publisher, who I've never met, to say, can you give away my book? And I'm thinking she's either going to say, you're a genius or you're crazy. And luckily what she said was, well, Justin, what you don't know is next month, and this was a year ago, we're launching an initiative of the Sounds True Foundation. And the mission of the foundation is to bring spiritual and mindful teachings to underserved populations. And we're a bunch of old white people, and we've been wondering who's going to be the vehicle and what is the plan. And here you are calling me the day after our meeting with a plan. She goes, let's do it. And so we raised, initially Sounds True had given, $40,000 for us to go to a few schools. And they were funny. They underestimated me, to be honest with you. They go, well, we think if we get 5 schools, that would be great. And I was like, y'all don't know who you're messing with here. And so we ended up in 2 months raising over $250,000.
Wow.
$250,000 to go to what was going to be 15 to 20 schools. We did 3 schools and then COVID.
COVID hit, right.
And so what's amazing, though, is we still got a lot of money and we're still raising more money. Like people are still donating to bring this out. And so we've pivoted. We were planning to go in person again in the fall. Obviously that didn't happen. So we've completely pivoted virtual. I actually have an event tomorrow that I'm recording this virtually with New Roads School in Los Angeles, and then Chicago the next day. And so it's really amazing because we're actually with a lower budget able to reach more students.
Oh, absolutely. And how are the young people who, again, they're coping with social distancing, they're coping with distance learning, there's the digital divide and digital equity issues, and other issues. How are the young people responding to this virtually?
Oh, they love it. We piloted an event. Our pilot virtual event was a few months ago in San Bernardino.
Okay.
With San Bernardino High School. And even the administrators, they were like, we're a little nervous, how's this going to go? And it ended up being just phenomenal. I'm amazed at how much we're able to transmit virtually, actually. When you really show up virtually, a lot can happen. And the kids are loving it. And I'll tell you the truth, people always underestimate how ready for this the students are. People always think they have to dumb it down for the kids, or no, they get it. They just are ready for somebody to speak to them in a way that they understand and who actually believes that they can.
Sure.
And I think that's what I show up with them because I was them. I was literally in their shoes. So.
And are there any events planned in the LA region over the next, few weeks, few months?
I wish I could give you actual dates, but there's a lot being built out right now.
Okay.
The one tomorrow, obviously it was going to be too late, is at New Roads.
Sure. How can folks find out about the program, and how can they support the program?
Yeah, thank you. So people can go to staywokegiveback.org. So staywokegiveback.com is the book. Staywokegiveback.org is is the tour. And they can donate any amount. They can even sponsor a city. They can bring us to their school. And it literally only costs $8 per child. So even a small donation makes a big impact. We do it kind of like a Kickstarter campaign. And we've had thousands of people donate. And they can also see there where we're headed next and what's happening on the tour as it unfolds this fall and through next spring.
No, that's excellent. We'll definitely have this in the episode notes. In your book, I love the idea that you speak to, that you say, when people wake up to their own brilliance, it's like magic. So what are some of your thoughts and lessons from your book, and how do we navigate these trying times that we're in to move forward? What is your thought on the future?
I think my main message here is that people have to remember that they are enough. That even though you've gone through stuff, even though you have trauma, even though you're going through a hard time, no matter who you love, no matter how much money you have in your bank account, no matter what's going on right now, that there is a space within you that is unshakable and that is immovable. And you are enough, not for what you do, not for how much money you have, but literally for who you are as a person. And this was really, I think, one of even my biggest life lessons is learning, who am I as a person, not as defined by my achievements or what I've done. And I had to really reckon with this. You have to recognize, I had a 25 city and then going international book tour I went from a 25 city book tour to receiving unemployment benefits overnight, literally. And so if I hadn't done this work on who am I, what am I worth, where am I grounding into, what am I doing next, that stuff can knock some people out, And my mission with people, and why I say when people wake up to this, it's so beautiful, is because there's a lot of studies being done right now, particularly by a researcher in Denmark, about what they're calling post-traumatic growth.
Okay.
And you'll be hearing a lot about it over the next couple of years. And when some real trauma happens for people, a big traumatic event, you see some people, they end up overcoming and becoming stronger. And then some people get broken down forever, or for a very, very long time. And they tried to find they're trying to find what is the differentiator, what makes some people thrive and some people break down after a traumatic event. And what they found proven is that mindfulness and meditation gives you the capacity and the resilience to be able to hold more of what's happening in your life. So to hold the roller coaster of emotions as if you are the entire roller coaster instead of just feeling like you're getting taken down and then taken up. And so what I tell people is you actually have this capacity within you. And it sounds woo-woo when I say that, it's within you. But the thing is hopefully I can say this way here. As it relates to, I was saying that religious kind of thing, as I thought about meditation is not religious, but for people who are spiritual or religious or even not, one of the things that I always say is that prayer is when you're speaking to your source of higher power, and meditation is when you're listening to the messages coming back to you.
Interesting. Okay.
And whether that higher power is science, your higher self, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it is fine by whatever name. But we spend so much time asking and searching and seeking, show me outside of myself. But when we don't take the time to listen to what's within us, we miss the most important messages of all, and we miss our strength and we miss our power. And so my mission when I guide people through mindfulness practices is to give them access to that place within themselves that really knows what is next and the next best move for their life.
Well, you've got an outstanding podcast, which is being reimagined. You've got the book, which is doing great, and you've got this great tour. I know I personally find you sometimes on Insight Timer,
Yeah.
where I'm trying to myself wind down after a very long, stressful day when I myself feel as though I can't do it all. So I'm going to ask you, put you on the spot here, and just sort of guide us through a short meditation for our listeners today.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I'll tell people first as we do this, this is a very short practice that we'll do. Kind of the minimum recommended dosage of meditation is 12 minutes, but we're not going to do 12 minutes now. We're going to do 1.
Okay.
So just do this. Place one hand over your heart and then the other hand on top of that. Now, this isn't like a prayer position. This actually is scientifically proven to release oxytocin into the body, which helps us feel good, right? It's a kind of a hormone that helps us feel good, or a chemical. And then take a deep breath in, hold it, and take a deep breath out. And if you feel comfortable, allow your eyes to shut. And if you can't shut your eyes, that's fine. If you don't want to, you can keep them open, but keep it kind of blurred out, like a soft gaze off into the distance. And then on the count of 3, I want you to exhale everything out of your system through your nose. 1, 2, 3. Exhale everything out through the nose and come to completely empty. Now, to my count of 3, inhale for 1, 2, 3. Hold for 1, 2, 3. Exhale 1, 2, 3. Hold it out for 1, 2, 3. Let's do that again. Inhale 1, 2, 3. Hold for 1, 2, 3. Exhale 1, 2, 3. Hold it out for 1, 2, 3. Now just breathe normally. And I'm going to ask you a very simple question. And I want you to answer this question with the first thing that comes to your mind. If you could imagine a future version of yourself who is living the life of your dreams, and in this vision you have the body you've always wanted, you're in the house you've always wanted, the relationships you've always wanted, everything is exactly how you've always wanted and dreamed of. What would that vision look like to you? And even if it's fuzzy or blurry or incomplete, just let something arise to the surface, even if you have multiple images shuffling in your mind. And if that feels impossible, good, because if we don't think beyond our current circumstances, we'll never live beyond them. So imagine you can rub a magic lamp, you have everything you want. What do you see? And then notice in this vision, are you indoor or are you outdoor in the vision? What color are you wearing in the vision? Is there anybody there with you, or are you alone? And what's happening in this vision that indicates to you that you are indeed living the life of your dreams? What's happening? What's different about your life? And now I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer this question with the first 1, 2, or 3 words that come to your mind. Just say the answer in your own mind. Here's your question. As you look at this future version of you who is living the life of your dreams, what energy do you need to cultivate more of in your life now, today, to become that person that you see in your vision? I'll ask it again. What energy do you need to cultivate in your life now to become the person you're seeing in your vision? What is the energy that you need? And just repeat that word or those words in your mind a couple times. Then take a deep breath in, a deep breath out, and then open your eyes.
Well, Justin, that was a great meditation, and I think we all here in the studio are very grateful for this. And certainly for our audience, you can catch Justin and his meditations and his lessons on Insight Timer, but also we'll have on our episode notes where you can find his book as well as his speaking tour, as well as his new podcast. So congratulations for all of that, Justin. This has been just an outstanding dialogue, and we so appreciate you being on today.
Thank you, Dwayne. Can I say one thing really quick just
Absolutely.
about the meditation? Do I have a second to say that?
Absolutely.
So I just think it's important to frame for people so they don't come out from that and feel like, what do I do? Is what we just did is actually very powerful because we said, here's who you are now and here's who you want to become. And ultimately we said, like, there's a gap. And I want you to notice that the way I asked the question in that short practice wasn't, what do you need to do to become the person in your vision? It was, what energy do you need? Who do you need to be? Who do you need to become? Because that energy that we're bringing will affect every single thing that we're doing. And so many of us act like we don't know what we need. Like, well, let me ask this teacher or this guru or this somebody, tell me what I need.
Right.
Can somebody just tell me what I need to be well? And the thing is you know what you need. You know. And so this practice, this was just an example of what taking 3 minutes to just listen in will give you so much wisdom of what you'll need to take forward into your life. And this affects your relationships, your family, your job, and every other aspect of your life as well.
That's outstanding. Justin, we'd like to wind down our podcast with a little bit of a lightning round. So there are no right or wrong answers. We would like to get to know a little bit about your Los Angeles, since you're a really busy man doing all these wonderful things. We assume you spend some downtime enjoying our great city here. So a few lightning rounds to end. Where are you from originally?
Pittsburgh, California.
Which neighborhood do you live in currently?
West Hollywood, California.
Mobility is a huge issue here. Uber, Lyft, yellow cab, bike, bus, walk, metro, or scooter?
Lyft, always.
Favorite LA restaurant or two?
Ronin in West Hollywood on Melrose has the best pizza ever.
Okay.
Ever in LA, at least, not compared to New York. And then in North Hollywood, actually, there's an incredible restaurant called St. Anne's, and you have to get the nachos.
Okay. Favorite spot in LA to take a visitor?
There's a hike called the Paseo Miramar hike up in the Pacific Palisades. That's my favorite.
Lakers or Clippers?
Lakers.
Rams or Chargers?
I don't care.
Favorite park in Los Angeles?
It is also going to be that Paseo Miramar hike, which I guess isn't a park, but close.
Okay. And then, I'm going to guess the answer here. Bruins or Trojans?
Bruins, because I'm there. Even though when I got accepted into USC and UCLA.
Okay.
And I chose USC first. And I went to orientation. And we were at orientation, me and my mom, early because USC starts earlier. And somebody was on campus with a gun, robbing people in the dorms of their laptops on USC's campus. This is, in 2006. And me and my mom were like, I worked too hard to be over here with this still happening, so I'm switching schools. So I then ended up going to UCLA.
Well, we'll have to make an executive decision whether we edit that out or not. But we appreciate that, Justin. Thank you so much. This dialogue has been great, and we really appreciate your time and all that you are doing to build community here locally and globally. And to our audience, thank you again for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we hope you'll join us again next week as we look forward to another great conversation. And thank you to Community Build, not only for the work that you do to build community in our region, but for your support of this program and our efforts to promote civic knowledge and engagement. Until we meet again, stay strong and get involved. To learn more about Civitas LA and share feedback on this program, or if you have a recommendation about future programs, please visit our website at www.civitasla.com. And we hope you'll connect with us on Facebook at Civitas LA, Instagram at Civitas_LA, and Twitter at Civitas_LA.